listening to WSUW 91.7 FM, The Edge in Whitewater, Wisconsin. This is Yuri Rashkin, and the program is Rashkin Report. And my guest is Slava Rabinovich, one of the most well-known opposition bloggers in Russia, and a finance professional, as he had mentioned, of quite some stature. In the meantime, Slava, in Moscow, we are watching stores being torn down and private property and the owner of a major airport going under house arrest as basically, premise of his losing his property and all of his stuff being subdivided by stronger players. And at the same time, Putin is talking about how Russia should be welcoming and being more friendly to private business. What's going on?
Well, you have to separate all three storylines that you just mentioned. The pavilions and trading outlets. You have to separate them from the owner of one of the three airports and from what Putin says. First of all, what Putin says, it doesn't really matter. Putin has been lying and doing absolutely the opposite to what he was saying for the last 16 years. And if he says that this must be that and this should be this, and something should not be that, and so on and so forth, it doesn't really matter because he had 16 years to do what he needed to do and not be a clown of sorts, saying now all these things with those who view that from afar as somebody like you and your listeners. You should not be taking him serious. To
tell you the truth, when Americans think about Putin, I think many of them think of a half-naked guy on a bear. So because of all of this cult of personality treatments that he's been undergoing through, I think people in America really, take him less seriously as a person.
Well, if you are a Russia watcher, you would not laugh the next time you go to a circus. Basically, Putin had too many years to prove what he is trying to do based on his words. He had too many years to put the money where his mouth is.
Right.
He has a perfect track record of lying and not doing things that he was saying he would do, and the other way around. A perfect track record.
Right.
Not some track record, but the perfect one. So he is the guy who cannot be trusted with anything, with a dime of your money, with any intent that your imagination or anything like that might expect from him. He cannot be trusted, period. In terms of the owner of the airport, it smells of the same stories that we were witnesses to since 2003 with the attack against UCAS and imprisonment of Khodorkovsky and his partners, with the dismantling and theft of a company. There were too many stories like that, maybe of less profile, going starting from this case at 2003 and onwards. We had a similar case to the current one with Mr. Yevtushenkov, the major shareholder of a very large firm called Sistema. The shares of Sistema are traded on the London Stock Exchange. It is an LSE-traded company. The shares were down 85% when Yevtushenkov was put under house arrest with the so-called state investigation of privatization into an oil company called Bashneft that Sistema privatized and in fact purchased after privatization back in 2007. As a result of this, Bashneft was actually nationalized, taking away from Sistema, and that was about a year ago. Yevtushenko was put under house arrest, I believe, in August of 2014. He was out of the house arrest after he surrendered and gave Bashneft back to the state. He is still on the hook for $3 billion in cash that Sistema received from Bashneft in the form of dividends, since it was in Sistema's possession since 2007. The current house arrest of the Domodedovo's airport is probably the same power play of either government bureaucrats or most likely Putin's friends, who would like to get the control over that airport, which is the most modern and most efficient airport in Russia. And it smells like the Rothenberg brothers, who are Putin's friends, who became multi-billionaires out of, building their fortunes out of nowhere based on state contracts. They are in the possession of the Sheremetyevo airport, and they probably would like to consolidate the ownership in this sector, and this may be related to their wishes. So we are talking about the complete disintegration of the state, of law and order, of independent courts, of private property rights, of anything of that sort. We are talking about this disintegration of capitalism.
And
in regards,
right, go ahead.
Yeah, in regards to the trading rows and pavilions and that were dismantled by the mayor of Moscow with a disregard to property rights. We're talking about just about the same, but with the understanding that the intention, in theory, might have been somewhat valid, which should have been put on a public discussion. So, for example, if the state of Russia, if the city of Moscow is at fault, is to blame, or are at fault and are to blame for their illegal, unlawful selling of property rights to these owners, where they got hold of property rights to these spots, to this land, and to these pavilions back in the early days of the so-called early capitalism. So let's investigate who broke the law then, and if these assets were purchased in good faith, if they indeed have property rights, okay, let's negotiate and somehow make them whole and continue on with their businesses. Maybe the state and the city have to pay for remake of these pavilions so that they could be as attractive as they are in the likes of Paris or Brussels or London. Let's have a makeover and use public money for that, because this is the price to pay for the illegal agreements related to this property rights back then. But instead of doing that, or anything, maybe anything else rather than that, in the public domain, and the powers that be just go and just completely destroy these places overnight. It was, I believe, overnight, 8th of February, where in the morning the city woke up to the scenes as if we were at the end of some kind of a civil war or any other war, World War III, that happened on the streets of Moscow. Not talking about the complete destruction of these trading rows, which are a very, very vivid, part of the so-called small businesses. So property rights, destruction of businesses, people go bankrupt, people are out of work, people are, it's a violation of rights. Any kind of good intention of having a better look of the city turned out to be a complete disaster on all fronts, including the violent infringement on people's rights, including property rights, and disregard for just the Russian law, which exists but is not followed.
So basically, then what I'm hearing you say, Slava, is that government really doesn't care about businesses, big and small, while the big players are duking it out over airports and other assets. There are no property rights, and you can't trust Putin if he tells you what he had for breakfast.
Good summary.
You're listening to Rashkin Report.